Hello, welcome to episode 5 of Sitting In with Mr. Patrick Breen. I wouldn't be saying this if it wasn't for Patrick, because, well, yes, of course, he's a guest in this episode, but Patrick's also the person who actually pushed me towards putting out this podcast. So, huge thanks to Patrick. He also pretty much created most of the sounds that you hear in the intro of every podcast with the theme music that you can hear right now. As always, I hope you're staying safe, and if you're enjoying the podcast, I'd love to see more people sharing it on their Instagram story. I'll repost it as always, and yeah, with all that being said, I hope you enjoy this podcast with Mr. Patrick Breen. Patrick, what's up, man?
Yo, Reese, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm very good, man. I'm very good. It's good to chat with you.
Yeah, we just had a quick catch up, but it's always good to chat. Our chats tend to go from here to here to here to here.
I know,
in several
man.
different directions. But
I know.
What's been happening this last year? Because when we're recording, it's now nearly the end of December. Well, actually mid-December, but it'll be out in January. So how's your year been?
2019 was crazy, man. I mean, first and foremost, I got married this year. So that's one of the big ones, man. That's like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's the biggest life event I've experienced so far, especially in terms of like just all that goes into planning a wedding. And my wife and I have big families. So there were
Mhm.
like a lot of people, and it was it was an ordeal, man. It was an ordeal. But that definitely took up the planning and all of that. That takes up so much more time than you anticipate, right? Like it's you know, it's like any other project, right? There's so many moving parts and so many
Yeah.
little pieces. So that was like on a personal life thing, that kind of took up way more of the pie than my personal life has taken up
Yeah.
in recent years, right? So it's been cool kind of we got married in June, so it's kind of been cool in the back half of this year just to kind of see the two of us recalibrate, and just we both have some different projects that we're working on, business wise and personal wise, and it's just, man, it's cool to have. We've been dating for a long time. We live together. It's been, we not much has changed since we got married, but I think that just you know, kind of the way you just do life changes, and it's
Mhm.
like you start making decisions from the standpoint of like, okay, how is this going to benefit not just me, but my partner and my future family and all of that. So that's been cool. It's just a little added extra layer of purpose. And
Yeah,
it's
you heard it here first, everybody. Patrick's having kids.
no, no, not quite yet.
I'm joking.
Not quite yet. No, we talk about it, but definitely got a couple more things to do.
Yeah.
We need to adjust to this life change before we throw another level on top of
Of
it. So,
course. Mm-hmm.
but in terms of career wise and just making music,
The good
I
stuff.
was, the important stuff. Get rid of that marriage stuff. No, it was a year where I was, I had a lot of unexpected change happen. Not just, I mean, the marriage obviously was expected, and I think there was a lot of unexpected stuff with that, but it was so funny how my career kind of mirrored all of that change, all of that, you know, it's almost like there's kind of like a new birth happening with my career that I'm not really, I haven't really been too public about. Not
Mhm.
that, and not for any particular reason. You just don't want to. I'm the type of person that I just don't want to go to social media with every little thing that's happening. I just frankly don't think I'm that important. You know what I mean? Like, give people music, give them good content, give them entertainment, and kind of, you can invite people in, but don't, just leave your door wide open either. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
absolutely. I agree.
um, to make kind of a long story short, I was, there's a lot of different things going on, a lot of this, that, maybe, what ifs, whatever. But I had to take a step back this year and really take a look at kind of this new chapter of my life that I'm entering in and say, okay, what am I doing here? I've got a little bit of an Instagram following, I've got a little bit of a YouTube following, I've got content across the internet. And kind of since I started producing my own music, I have put out one song with my name on it. And there's a lot of reasons about that. Some things that have kind of gone one way and ended up going another way. And I don't really need to get into all of that. But the bottom line is I just took a look at it and said, oh, okay, you can put a 1-minute Instagram video out, you can put out a YouTube video, but like, what do you really want to do? What do you want to be? What do you want people to look back on your legacy and remember? And the kind of, regardless of what has happened, I've just felt like I needed to recalibrate and really put music at the forefront of everything that I'm focused on. So that's why I've been kind of super quiet on Instagram for sure. YouTube is kind of a different animal because there's that's part of my business. There's income attached to that. That's how one of the ways that I, support, myself and my wife and I, and that's something you just don't, that would be essentially like not showing up for work. So you don't do that, right?
Yep.
But, or like in your case, just saying to your students, I'm just going to not teach you anymore.
But to be honest, that is one of the joys of being self-employed. I can, obviously I wouldn't because respect the student as much as I hope they respect me. But, it is good to be able to cancel things.
Yeah, to have your flexibility and freedom. I mean, shoot, we're
sorry for interrupting.
No. It's a really good point. But I think, there's only so many hours in a day. I have, some other freelance work that I do also to earn a living. It's expensive to live in New York City. Hello. Yep. So as it came down to like those hours that I would spend each week on making little beats and posting that stuff to Instagram. And, that stuff was all really important to me. I think, every artist who has any sort of production or songwriting aspiration should be doing that, creating new music every single week, every day if you can. I mean, that's one of the best practices to get into, and I'm so glad I've done that for years now.
Yeah.
But it came to the point where it's just like, I had to ask myself, like, what are you afraid of? I have so many comments on my Instagram, thankfully, of interested people like, yo, where can I listen to this full track? And it's like this huge conviction of mine that I'm kind of like, I've got a few people who would probably listen, but I'm just like, I don't know if I'm holding out or if I needed it to look a certain way. I don't know. And there have been some things going on behind the scenes career-wise that have, created a little bit of a, how do you say? There were things in the works that didn't play out. And we'll just put it that way.
Yep.
And I'm kind of back in the driver's seat in a way that I haven't been for a long time. And all of that, I guess, is to say that I just kind of got to this point where I got a little sick of myself and wanted to say, okay, just put something out because you like it right now. So
yep, totally.
I spent the last couple of months just not working with necessarily the person that I thought would give me the best chance to get seen by their audience, or not working with the person that I thought was like the best connection for me to make. Like, no, just a guy that I know in town here who's an amazing singer, writer, top line writer. I play guitar for him sometimes in his band. I said, yo, let's do some writing. Let's see what happens. And first session was kind of we kind of were a little fuzzy on something. And I took some time really figuring out like, how do I make this track interesting? I sent it to him and 3-4 sessions later, we had the whole thing produced, most of the thing recorded, and we just like, we were intentional. We stuck to a schedule. We said, yo, let's have this thing done. Let's have the lyrics done by this date. Let's have the vocals cut by this date. Let's have the production done by this date. And, you know, we bought ourselves some time because we want to put this out in January. And now we're just tweaking and enjoying and finessing and making it the best we can. But it was a real big lesson for me in terms of like, it doesn't have to be that complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, no, that's a very mature decision to make, you know, like even just setting deadlines. Like I find that so hard creatively. We could totally speak about that for ages because I've been working on something myself, obviously. But
yeah,
no, it sounds like you're really just trying to focus on the things that you want to do, and maybe haven't had the chance to do that as much in the past. Am I right?
Yeah, I think, dude, it really requires you to get lean and like put everything that you got going on in a metaphorical pot, turn the heat up, boil it down, and see what's at the bottom. Do you know what I mean? Like, in for me, like, you know, we could get cruising on Instagram because I think you and I both kind of have what kind of little notoriety maybe we have is because of Instagram. I know that's where it started that was really the first thing that started popping off for me. And I think it was the same for you.
Yep.
And now it's like turning into this, I mean, even forget about the algorithm changes, because I think that's just a pointless thing to complain about. Like it's, you know, we're like living in free real estate. You know what I mean? Like it's free. Like we can't really complain about it. But I just think like culturally too, it's just changed a lot since I think the early days when we were really enjoying it and enjoying making content. And I just look at it as, hey, this is a place where like I have a lot of people who have showed a lot of love, and I want to stay, you know, I want to still create for them, but I can't, at the end of the day, if the goal is to share music, and Instagram is standing in the way from me completing music because I've convinced myself in my head that like, oh, well, I got to create a video or two a week and I got to post every day and I got to stick to the schedule because I listen to a ton of Gary Vee and blah, 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 blah. Like, it's just at the end of the day, like there is no one size fits all. So if personally Patrick can't focus on finishing the song because he's too worried about 1-minute clips, then like something's got to change, and like you got to be able to give yourself the permission to do that. Like it's, you know, you listen to all of these freaks, not freaks like in a weird way, but like these super high achieving freak of nature type people that like do it all and don't sleep and do all that. Like I like sleeping. Like I feel better when I sleep. You know what I mean? You. But no. I just think you have to figure out what's best for you and move in that direction, period.
I think like that's everything you said is bang on the money. And one thing that you did say is that the part about, you know, something's got to go, and in this case it might be less Instagram videos, but you know, you deserve that time. You have put in so much work in the last few years to make even just Instagram, like YouTube's a whole other beast, but just to make it so good. And I know so many great things have came out of that for you. And
for sure, no
for
question.
me, like if I wasn't in university at the time, I wouldn't have been able to do Instagram because, you know, I was just fortunate that I had so much free time, study time, that I could just like make videos and stuff. And
for sure,
I think we both jumped on the bandwagon at the right time. And now it's become like, all right, fair enough, all these changes have happened and it's harder to make it, but I think we're both very fortunate to be in the position we're in, where we can now be like, all right, I'm going to focus on myself, and hopefully I can present something in a year's time or 6 months, whatever it may be, that it's not like a thank you to them, because it's totally like it's for you as an artist, but then you have something bigger than just the 1-minute clips and photos. And
exactly that. At the end of the day, like if you're, you know, I got to the point where I felt like I had mastered for Patrick, like I had done the best 1-minute stuff that I was going to do.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean? Like beyond doing something crazy artistic with the filmmaking or whatever, or going deeper into the visuals or whatever. It's just like I had kind of figured out what worked. I had a couple of videos like that I was fortunate enough to have kind of go crazy and get reshared and get like a couple million views or whatever. Like that was crazy. But like chasing nothing, it's not that nothing came of it. I had a lot of people decide to follow me, and hopefully those people will want to listen to music, or they've gone over to YouTube or whatever. Um, but at the end of the day, like if Instagram goes away, which is such a stupid thing to say. I hate when people say that. Oh, if social media goes away, what are you going to do with your life, Sonny?
Yeah.
But like at the end of the day, it's a bunch of, from my vantage point, a bunch of ideas. And like your goal as an artist, ideating is huge. Coming up with ideas is a huge thing that you need to master.
Yep.
And being able to start fresh and take something really quickly and create something out of nothing, that's a huge skill set. And I encourage everybody to go and pursue that. But at the end of the day, like your legacy will be defined by the things that you finished, not the things that you started. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, man, I just like, I create the music that I want to listen to. And hopefully there's other people who like that idea. And
Yeah.
it's just, I'm curious more than anything. It's like, and I do have songs, you know what I mean? Like there are, which ironically enough, anytime an idea, like the ideas that I start and I like write lyrics and write vocal melodies, those don't get shared on Instagram, which is so funny. The
Well,
ones
I'm the
that
same.
are,
I'm the exact same.
right? It's so funny.
Yeah.
It's always the ones that I share on Instagram are, for whatever reason, always the ones that are like, maybe someday. Maybe I'll
I
pitch
think-
this to another artist or something, but those
I
are the
think
ones
part
I
of
share.
it is, yeah, sometimes I don't know how you feel about it. For me, it's like I don't want to put out like all the ideas for my record, because then people are gonna have heard them all, even if it's little snippets. Like I kind of want to hold some of them back,
Right.
you know, so that people
Yeah.
actually are like, ah, cool, right, this is different. Whereas
Yeah.
if I'd already done previews of everything, it'd be like, even if it's just me jamming over it or whatever, it's like, I don't know. I feel like I'd rather just like pull back a bit and like let them brew and like get it sounding good for the record, and then
Yeah, I
people can
feel you.
hear the stuff. But I think, yeah, we've been talking about like kind of what you've been up to and stuff. But one thing I'm genuinely interested in, I have a list of things that I'd like to talk to you about. So maybe we'll get through them all. We've kind of
Nice.
touched on honestly all of them, but just because you're such a great speaker. But
Oh, thanks, man.
I'm just curious. How did you actually get into writing songs? Because I know that you're very competent, like honestly, a really good guitar player.
Thanks, man.
Like, did it come in hand with like learning your favorite songs, or like what was the process behind like you getting into songwriting?
It's so funny, man. I think now I'm maybe a version of the guitarist that I always wanted to be, but guitar was something that really didn't come very naturally to me. And I know like, oh, everybody's got to work hard. I totally agree with that. Like any desire, skill set, whatever, everybody's got to work hard for it. But I do also believe that there's, you know, if me and LeBron James worked just as hard at basketball our entire lives,
Yeah.
something tells me that guy would probably get a little bit farther than I do on the court. Just saying. You know, there's some people just that just have a certain inclination towards certain skills. It's just like it's in our genes. It's the way we're made up. And I always had a good ear. The guitar thing was, it's truly honestly something that I've really had to work hard at, but where I always kind of felt not even comfortable, because songwriting is infinitely harder when you think about it, really. Like, okay, everything has essentially already been said, and your job as a songwriter now is to say something that's already been said thousands and thousands of times in a new and unique and interesting way. And when you think about it that way, it's like daunting.
Mm.
But I remember when, you know, when I got my first MacBook, I was in high school, and towards the end of high school, and by the time I really decided that I wanted to play guitar, because music was in my family. Strangely enough, my mom is one of five girls. All of her sisters are like somewhat musically inclined, more so than others, but they can all kind of carry a tune. And my mom always jokes like she loves music, but she didn't get the music gene. But we had this rule in our family because my great grandfather was a piano teacher for a living, that everybody plays piano for like 7 years. So I did that, hated it. I wanted to play rock music, and my piano teacher wanted me to play like Pockbell's Canon and Mozart and all this garbage. No, I'm just kidding. It's beautiful music. I just, as a 7-year-old, you're not into that. You want to play some freaking Nirvana or something on the piano. I don't know how that would translate, but anyway. So somewhere along the line, I think my mom just knew that I had this love of music in me, and she said, "Oh, well, maybe the guitar. My aunt plays the guitar, so hey, we'll kind of keep that tradition in the family and pass it on to the next generation." And she bought me a guitar, and it kind of just sat there. But it became the vessel through which I wrote songs, and I still
Ah.
have like all of these songs that like I wrote as like a
So
teenager.
so
That
songwriting came before you actually exploring the guitar as like your primary focus.
No, the songwriting kind of came to me. It was something that I looked at as there's no rules here. You just write what you feel and you write what you think, and I liked that. I
Mm.
was I wasn't a poor student, but I was kind of like I was a tough student for my teachers because I didn't like to fall in line. It wasn't so much that I didn't uh, it wasn't so much that I didn't like following the rules. I just didn't like doing the things that I didn't want to do. I had no, like in the subjects that I liked, I was a straight A student. In the subjects that I didn't like, I was like a C student. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I did just enough to pass the class. And um, I think songwriting to me was so interesting because I knew that it was just like, oh, you feel things, which I do, and you play music to those things, and you write words and you write vocal melodies. And it was always really interesting to me, and what kind of was maybe influenced by the technology era that we've grown up in was opening GarageBand and realizing, oh man, like I can make tracks pretty easily. So I literally had no audio interface, no mic, no nothing. I would open the computer and I would plug headphones in and I would play guitar into the built-in microphone and I would sing into the built-in microphone. And I wrote like 15 songs in a summer that nobody heard. And that was the summer going into college. And I was like, oh,
Mm.
maybe. So, in college, I was fortunate enough to find a couple of guys that wanted to play in a band. And surprisingly, we all took it really seriously. We had some other people. We played in a band for 4 years. And that was really kind of where I cut my teeth, where I learned. We wrote, one of the, we we weren't a well-known band, but we were known in the town, right? Like we were one of it
Yeah.
it was one of those kind of college towns where live music was really appreciated. We played at, some of the bars and a lot of the parties and all of that stuff.
Cool.
Um, and the thing that people always said was that, wow, they just wrote so many songs. So it was an interesting experience because we weren't a cover band. We wanted to write songs together. And so I really got into it even at a deeper level in college, right? Bands obviously break up, even though when you're in it, you're like, the band's going to make it, man.
Yeah.
Um, and we had kind of, it wasn't an ugly breakup for them, but it was an ugly breakup for me. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? So I
Mhm.
kind of had to make that choice like, okay, do I pursue this on my own or do I just go get a job and be just like a hobbyist musician? You know what I mean? So that was kind of the start of the journey. But I just always had this like desire to create and produce, and I was producing music long before I even called myself a producer. If you really kind of think about it, the producer is like the songwriter of the track, of the
Yeah.
recording, right? Like that's what the producer does. And that's probably my favorite thing. Like taking all of these different sounds and assembling them into like one piece of music. And to me, that's very different than what the mixing engineer does or what the mastering engineer does. Like those are two different things, and sometimes all of those different roles kind of cross over together. But yeah, as a writer, I've always just like felt most at home in kind of building.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So the process, like building a song, how has it changed for you throughout the last? How long's this been? Maybe 10 years of doing songs. Because
Yeah, man.
let's
all
say
of
10 years.
that.
So
Yeah.
obviously you've done stuff with a band, you've done solo projects, you've worked with labels. Like, how has your process changed throughout all these different opportunities? Your writing process.
I think, it's one of the things, like I've done it solo, I've done it with collaborators, I've done it with a band. I think the best piece of advice I would give to anybody is create with create with others, just because it's good. You learn, you like I love working with people like yourself. Like when you came to New York, we're so busy doing other stuff that we like barely had any time to like sit down and actually play music together,
Uh-huh.
which we'll get to, though I'm not even worried about that. But like I just love you would never think that like two guitarists would collaborate on a track. You would think, oh, like I'll go get a keyboard player, I'll get a vocalist, I'll get a whatever. But like I love working with people that do what I do, but differently and in a lot of ways better. Like I can just learn from what you do technically, and you have a whole different skill set and years of training that I didn't ever have. I never pursued that. And it's so good to collaborate with others. It is so valuable, and it makes you better, and it accelerates your learning so quick because you're not
Yeah,
sitting
totally.
there learning a lesson. You're sitting there participating in creating something with somebody else. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And I think the,
Um,
the thing about collaboration is that it can happen between anybody. You know,
yeah,
you could literally collaborate with someone who's not a musician and like still come together and make something that is as valuable as two musicians collaborating.
for
And I
sure.
think
For
that's
sure.
incredible. And one thing that I really love is collaborating with people who maybe like don't know where they want the music to go. Like maybe they've not got the eye that you and I could have. It's like, oh, the track needs to go in this direction. Maybe they just
Hmm.
have lyrics and can sing a nice melody, but don't
Yeah.
know nothing about anything
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
And I love that position of like bringing an idea into fruition through, I guess, what I can bring to the table as an artist. And yeah,
No
that's
question.
one of
Yeah.
the like the nice things in collaboration for me, as well as obviously it's always a learning opportunity. You know, if you can play with people
Yeah,
and
for
surround
sure.
yourself with people who are eager to create, then you can't really complain.
Yeah. And like come up with the song and serve the song. I mean, the next single that I'm going to put out is going to be so different because it's just like it's so funny because I started out talking about how I love songwriting because there's no rules, but the way that we've been trained in, modern society is to apply rules to everything and put everything into like a little box and category and oh, well, it's got to be this. I'm working on a song right now with a friend of mine who's an amazing vocalist, R&B vocalist, like writer, and he and I were just like we're both singing on this track, and
Cool.
it's like my voice is very like my voice is cool, but it only does so many tricks, whereas this guy is doing like all this crazy like beautiful R&B, acrobatics and ad libs, and he's just killing, and it's just like there were you want to say, okay, well, this is my track and he's the featured artist, so like, well, I've got to be doing this, and I've got to sing on the hook somewhere, but it's like, no, the song needs his voice front and center on the hook, no questions asked. There's just like that's the thing about collaboration that will stretch you and challenge you. It's like it's not even an ego thing, because I think you know me well enough that like
I mean,
that's
it's
not
serving the
where I
music. You've
operate.
said it before.
Exactly.
Like that's all it is. And I
You
had a
gotta,
similar position. Like I think it was 2 weeks ago. Had a rehearsal with the band, right? And the drummer was like, "You sure you don't want a guitar solo? Because it's instrumental music. There's a lot of like people
yeah,
soloing."
yeah,
And he was like, "You sure this track doesn't want a guitar solo? Because it's like, it's your record." I was like, "Man, it just doesn't need it. Like
couldn't agree more.
it doesn't even need a
Couldn't
solo, or maybe
agree
it's like the piano
more.
or whatever it may be. But it's like
Yeah,
just just being able to say, it's fine. Like the song doesn't need me.
I
Like I've designed it.
literally couldn't agree more.
They can it's all gonna sound better without it. Trust me.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like that's the trap that we fall into as guitarists. I mean, I'm in the same boat. Like I'm trying to come up with guitar for this track, and it's like, it really doesn't need much. It doesn't. It really doesn't. It's like a R&B kind of like funky disco roots kind of track. And I mean, back in those days, I mean, the guitar wasn't really doing a whole lot other than like,
Yeah. Rhythm.
you know what I mean? Like it's just, it doesn't need much, and you gotta just serve the song. That is absolutely the case. But I think like, back to your question about songwriting, yes, collaborate, huge, but like just write a lot. Like that's in I think the thing that has taken me longer than I'd be willing to admit, but I'm glad I'm starting to get there, is just don't be precious with your songs. Just don't. It's in the day that we live in. If 6 months from now you just hate that song, or 2 years from now you think, this doesn't really sound like me anymore, or it sounds like an amateur version of me, and I'm much better now, you can always take stuff down. I've done it.
Yeah.
I've done it. I had a whole, record out at one point that I thought was the best thing I would ever produce. And it took me so long to get these songs written and finished and recorded and all of that. And they're not bad songs. They're just, compared to what I'm capable of now, they don't even hold a candle. Obviously, I'm older and more experienced, and so and they don't sound like what I'm doing anymore. So they're not on the internet, and that's totally fine.
It's totally fine, but I also think it's just a snapshot, and when you're 50 years old, you can look back and see that snapshot. But I don't know, I would have kept it up. Like, you know what, it doesn't sound like
I knew
right
you were
now,
gonna say
but
that.
It's going to push me to get something out in the next year or two. Yeah,
I feel you. That's a really good point. That's a really good point. Like, hey, most of what I have out is this old
people
version of myself.
People are still going to dig it, like someone.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you.
Can,
maybe I'll re-release it. Maybe,
if I was to do that, like with my Instagram page, for example, I'd have no videos because I don't feel like any of them truly represent me. Like, cause I can't say much in a minute. I mean, I can, but like, you need to hear it. You need to see it live.
I feel
to really get it. Like improvised music. It happens in the space that is in.
Yeah.
And that's partly why I find content creation hard now, is because I'm not in the same space as I used to be.
Yeah. Is that kind of where like everything that you are about now, it's like improvised, period? That's it.
It's always, I mean, all right, so it's not explicitly like improvisation, because then it would be free improvisation, and that would be like, no grids, it's all just like whatever you want to play at that moment, and then it's a bit sporadic. So it's not like I'm doing a free improv album. But for the last 5 years or something, the only thing, or what I've felt most comfortable doing as like sort of an artist or a creative individual, is just like improvising, right? And when I say improvise, I mean like, the way it works in jazz, where it's like, well, there's a song and all that, and you improvise within the framework of that. It's the same kind of approach that I'm using in this, but it's not like traditional jazz music at all. Like, it's really not, but it's definitely like a contemporary version of what I think jazz is. But for me, it's like improvisation's where it's at, and I love creating And improvisation is really just like fast composition, so I can slow that down, and I love doing that as well. Like I love collaborating and stuff. But yeah, I guess if I could put myself in a box, I am an improviser, and that is what I love doing.
I love that, man. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it just keeps everything open as well, because I don't really care what genre or style it is. Like, I have a voice, and if you want it to fit in your box, then that's fine. I'll come in and we can do that.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it's closed some doors for me in terms of like, once upon a time I was thinking like, what if I was like, touring with like a pop act or like doing something like that. But you know what? I don't even think I'm interested in that, really. For a time I was thinking that's what guitarists do. I should do it. That's the status quo. Like you need to have a something like that you do. But I think I just want to create my own stuff and like allow that to hopefully take me places. And if it doesn't, then at least I've tried.
For sure.
And if anybody wants me to go on tour, then cool. I'll probably take it.
Exactly.
But, it's not something I'm striving for. It's like
I feel you.
I'm not concerned about fitting into what people think a guitarist should do. It's like I just want to somehow improvise, and like that's just what I love doing.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. But anyway, more about you. Sorry for interrupting the podcast. I'll just be a minute. If you're receiving value from this episode, consider supporting me by getting some merch from teespring.com/stores/sitting-in-podcast. That's teespring.com/stores/sitting-in-podcast. So you obviously live in New York. Have you lived there for your whole life?
No, I haven't. But I have a very long-standing relationship with New York.
So where did you grow up? Sorry, quickly.
I grew up in a town called Syracuse, New York, which is like 2-3 hours, not 2 hours, but like 3-4 hours from Canada.
Oh, damn.
So it's technically smack dab in the middle of the state. It's called Central New York, or as people from the city would say, upstate, because everything is upstate to them.
Right.
So, when people ask where you're from and, you're in the 5 boroughs, you say, oh, I'm from upstate.
Right.
But to them, upstate is like an hour away, an hour upstate. But anyway, so I grew up there. My dad was born in the Bronx, raised on Long Island. We have a lot of family scattered throughout either the 5 boroughs or out on Long Island or whatever. So I had just a very loving, adoring relationship with the city as a kid. I loved coming into the city, visiting family, going to Yankees games with my dad. Like it was, I grew up, my parents split when I was really young. So I had just kind of very individualized time with both of my parents. It was like when I was hanging out with my dad, it was just the two of us. When I was hanging out with my mom, like a lot of times it was just the two of us. She went on and got remarried. It was, but my time with my dad was always very kind of special. And I associate New York with a lot of that. I associate it with family, with our roots, with, my great grandparents coming through Ellis Island and just the whole, Irish immigrant story. So I've always really cherished that. And as a musician, when I was starting to kind of, do enough that it was like, oh, like I could maybe work in this industry. The choices in the States are really New York, LA, and Nashville if you want to be a writer or a session player. Nashville's changing quite a bit, but like, that was the tradition there. And it was, I had done some work in Nashville and I really liked it, but I didn't know that was really the spot. And, Manhattan is only 4 hours from where I grew up, so it was kind of a no-brainer. So my then girlfriend and I moved here 6 years ago, and we have been here ever since. So yeah, I'm not technically a born and raised New Yorker, but I am definitely a native New Yorker and feel very connected to the city. It wasn't culture shock when I moved here. Like it's, it's always been a comfortable place for me.
Cool. Yeah, I think like when I came to visit New York, like
I was just blown away by how big it was, man. Like, I thought I knew big cities,
Yeah.
and then I tried to walk from downtown Brooklyn to the D'Angelico store in Manhattan, and it took me hours. Like,
Yeah.
I looked at my map, and I was like, yeah, it's like pretty much a straight line. I'm pretty
Yeah.
fast walker, but it's huge. But
Yeah, it's big.
yeah, so you're in New York, right? Some think it's like the central hub for music in the world, which I guess it is in some regards. How do you feel about that statement? You know, like what's it giving you? Do you feel like it lives up to the hype?
I think that's all kind of really changing. I think New York is probably the cultural center of the world in terms of, you kind of have these international cities like New York, London, Paris that are just they're melting pot cities. There's a lot of diversity. There's a lot of culture, fashion, music, art happening. And New York is one of those cities for sure. I definitely think New York and London have always kind of had a trend setting back and forth.
Mm.
Um, and, LA for sure. I think social media has really, LA has always had kind of its own thing going on, but the connection that I see like teenagers having nowadays with LA and wanting to be like all the influencers that are out there and wanting to be like, famous for whatever.
Yeah.
That's very interesting to me.
Uh,
So I do think New York will always, and it's funny, they come to New York and they don't leave like Soho or, the East Village or whatever. They stay in like the areas where they see influencers hanging out. And it's
right.
very, very interesting.
Hmm.
There's a lot more to New York than just those two neighborhoods. And there's a lot more to New York than Times Square to all of my future New York tourists out there. So get out there and explore because New York's an awesome place.
Oh, there's so much.
But yeah, I don't know. I think, I see a lot of my friends who want to go write and produce going to LA. I see a lot of people who want to come and live a little bit more of a, traditional bohemian lifestyle and really get immersed in art and culture and writing and gigging out. That's what you come to New York for. You come to New York for the cultural experience and for the way that kind of you are always in kind of like a love-hate relationship with New York because it's a very difficult place to live. There's a lot about it that's super convenient and a lot about it that is the most inconvenient. There's a lot of things that make it really frustrating to live here, and there's a lot of things that make you think, why would I ever live anywhere else? It's very um, it's the yin and yang. It's that duality that makes it so beautiful. You know what I mean? And where I feel like in LA, it's very kind of like, constant like chill vibe, constant like it doesn't change much. You
Right.
have, it's kind of like the weather. The weather doesn't change much, and the vibe doesn't change much either. Um,
Maybe that's
whereas
why. Maybe there's a much stronger connection to the weather than we've thought.
Oh, I don't doubt it, man. I do not doubt it. LA's beautiful. Yeah, but it's the more time I spend out there, the more time I realize like you better get a really nice car because you're spending a lot of time in your car. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, no, I
So,
don't know. It's interesting. It's a really interesting. I think it's changing. I think once upon a time that was the way it was. Like,
mm,
hey, New York is like the music and culture epicenter of the universe as far as we know it. But I don't know. I think it's changing a little bit.
yeah.
I don't know. What I grew up knowing is New York has changed so much. You have so many native New Yorkers, born and raised New Yorkers that are kind of either being pushed out of Manhattan completely or being pushed to the furthest kind of parts of it because of gentrification and all of that kind of stuff and just the rising cost of living in Manhattan has gotten to be so great.
Hmm.
Y- you don't really have kind of those true old New York vibes that you used to have. You know what
Right.
I mean? The people who were born and raised here are fighting for that, and they feel like it's being taken from them because of people, frankly, like me, that come in and, you know, moved to a certain neighborhood because it was affordable, and now my neighborhood's expensive. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just crazy. It's crazy how quickly it happens. You know, in 3 to 5 years, an entire neighborhood turns around. It's really insane.
Yeah. You live in quite a nice part, though. I remember, like, your spot was pretty good, right?
Yeah, I do. You know, I do like my neighborhood. I live over by Columbia College. So I live, you know, kind of right where Harlem ends and Morningside Heights begins. It's a nice part of the neighborhood, but, you know, obviously a lot of people who were born and raised in Harlem don't like that Harlem doesn't look the way that it did when they were growing up. And it was kind of, you know, a huge cultural epicenter for the Hispanic community and the African American community, and just frankly, kind of the one place they could go where they didn't feel like, you know, they were being pushed out. It was their neighborhood. It was their turf. It was, you know, kind of their safe space. And because of gentrification and all of that, and they feel like that's been taken away from them. So it's, you know, being a transplant, so to speak, you know, you be respectful. You realize that, hey, I'm not going to live here forever. And the people who were born here, they do want to live here forever. And, you know, how can I respect the neighborhood, and how can I be a positive impact in this community? And, you know, how can I, you know, just, you know, try to leave the places that you live in a little bit better than you found them, I guess.
Yeah. Cool.
You
So
know?
you've been living in New York for some time now then. So I've got potentially a hard question. But what is your favorite thing about New York as a musician, and your favorite thing about New York just as a person who lives there?
As a musician, I like that it's one of the places that you can just be respected for being an artist.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get that everywhere you go. I think a lot of the, you know, you and I both know that especially today, there's a lot of ways to make a really great living as a musician, especially because of the internet, if you're willing to use the tools of today. But there's not a lot of people who realize that. And, you know, I've certainly had my fair share of conversations with people where the general tone is, so what exactly do you do to make money? Which is
I actually got a question about that earlier.
Did you?
Yeah, I mean, I tried to put a thing on Instagram, but I left it too short. But we got one question from, we can actually answer this now. It's probably a good time to get into it. I hope he responded to my question, because I wasn't 100% sure what he meant. But do you know Sean McNally?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he was saying his question was main source of income from music versus what you want to be your main source of income, and a question mark. I'm not entirely sure what it means, but maybe if you want to answer that, I can.
Yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind speaking to this real quick. But to answer your question real quick, my favorite thing about living in New York as a musician is just the music and arts community. I think is amazing, and it's a lot of people who will make you feel, you know, at the end of the day, we all want to feel accepted, and we all want to feel that,
totally.
our time is being spent in a you know, when it costs you so much to get good as a musician, artist, writer, producer, whatever, especially if you do any number of those things. If you're doing more than one, if you're doing one, it's a tremendous uphill battle. If you're doing multiple things, it's a tremendous uphill battle. And to just have people be like, so I don't really understand you. There's no course material for people like you. That's just nonsense. So it's nice to live in a city where people are like, oh, you're a musician? That's so dope. How can I support you? And here's, oh, by the way, here's my project that I'm working on. And it's dope. My favorite, what was it, non-music thing?
No. Yeah, your favorite thing as a resident, like, just could be anything.
Oh, I love the accessibility of living in Manhattan. Like, there's just everything that I need. I don't ever have to. I love driving, but it's really nice to be able to get wherever I need in essentially 15 minutes. And literally, there's nothing I want that I can't get in Manhattan. Nothing.
Wow.
Maybe if I wanted like some Swedish chocolates, I couldn't get those here. Swedish? Yeah, Swiss chocolates is what I meant. Sweden, I'm sure our friend Simon would tell us that they have amazing chocolates as well. Yeah. Swiss chocolates is what I meant. Anyway, I digress. Point is, Yeah, everything's here, and I love that. That's just it's amazing. But to talk about income, man, I think like the you have to do what makes sense for you. Like you have a certain skill set, you have come up with a system for learning guitar that you think is really I when you were talking to me about it, I was like, "Oh, why didn't I think of that?" It's just it's so you've come up with kind of this way of thinking about the guitar that is so simple and kind of strips back all of the BS that like of course you're teaching guitar. And
Yeah.
of course I'm not teaching guitar. Do you know what I mean? Like you have to look at what it is that you do. Frankly, if you see somebody else in the world that you know that's making money doing a certain thing as it relates to their craft or their skill set, you're like, I have a deep curiosity about that. And I think I could do that. Just try it, explore it, figure it out, try a few things. Um, I don't need to say this, but I guess I will. And I don't say this because whatever, but YouTube, frankly, has become like a nice piece of my income that I never anticipated. I got a hunch, call it a download from God Himself, call it the universe intervening, whatever you need to do to frame it in your mind. I got this strong sense that YouTube was something that I needed to explore. And I had created a lot of content online for years and years and years and had never had a big sort of blow uppy kind of success. Never. Just moderate, gradual success. And YouTube was really the first thing that I had a couple of instances of like, oh shoot, that's crazy. And it was just me kind of, well, what I will tell you is that I got this download, this little idea that I should be focusing on YouTube in 2016, and I didn't make my first video until halfway through 2017. So,
Right.
listen, I totally understand cold feet. I totally understand procrastination. And I totally understand not being sure about something that you think you might have some success at. But, I just took something that was already happening, i.e., a lot of people asking me questions about gear. What was resonating with people was not only the content that I was making on Instagram, but how I was getting that sound from my apartment. What gear are you using? What recording techniques are you using?
Cool.
Yeah, yes, I've spent a lot of years perfecting and working on my skills as a guitarist, but at the end of the day, if you don't know how to get a good sound in a DIY fashion, to use a modern day coined term, you're not going to sound good. So yeah, that's a little bit of a gear thing. Yeah, that's a little bit of a, recording technique thing. So I kind of took commonly asked questions that I would get in my Instagram DMs or even in real life. And I started making videos just because I got tired of answering these questions. And I said, okay, so for every time somebody asks me about what MIDI keyboard they should buy, I'm just going to send them the URL to this video that I've made. Boom, here's all the info you need. It saves me time, and we'll see what happens. And it turned into something that I definitely didn't anticipate. The first video that I made was about MIDI keyboards, and that video got like 250,000 views in a year maybe, but I had like 100 subs when I uploaded this video. So
Right.
it was, but I did a lot of research. I figured out what I needed to do to succeed on YouTube. I did my homework. I even paid for like little courses from other YouTubers that I respected. So I did a little bit of coursework to really give myself the best chance to succeed in this kind of venture. And it's turned into something that I enjoy, something that hopefully will. I'm talking about music. So my mentality is, if my ultimate goal is to put music out that people listen to, which is kind of like why I think I'm here, yeah, why not find ways to make income that are a little bit easier than making money via streaming, which I hope to do as well. And that's one of my big goals for 2020, to make my Spotify income a little bit more substantial, which you can do. I mean, look at some of our peers, man, that are just like Chris Maswera, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a friend, and I certainly have never had a conversation with him about income, but I know, just based on what I know about Spotify income and the numbers that he's putting up, like, he's deservedly doing pretty well. You know what I mean? And you can do it. You just have to share songs. So I think there's a lot of ways. There's a lot of ways to go about it, making an income. There's freelance opportunities. There's websites that facilitate, freelance opportunities. There's, if you're pretty competent as a beat maker or a producer or an instrumentalist, there's, you can go and license your songs to some of these licensing libraries and let YouTubers use them, or whatever. I mean, there's one of the sites that most of the music that all of the music that I make, that I use in my YouTube videos, is I created myself, but I had to put a Christmas video out a couple weeks ago, and I just didn't have time in my schedule to make a Christmas beat, and I wanted one. So I just went to this website and just paid a small fee, like $15, and licensed a track. And like, somebody's getting that money. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many ways to go about it. And I think, like, you've got to explore different things. I mean, personally, I make money freelancing as a content creator and videographer and musician. So whether that's playing for people, producing for people, writing with people, whatever. I've been in New York, networking here, working with musicians, meeting people for, 6 years now. Well, if you count the time where I was commuting into New York to work, 7, 8 years. So I've been in the culture for a long time, and it's just now getting to the point where, like, the metaphorical phone rings pretty often. And then beyond that, there's, if you can grow a social media following, there's paid partnership opportunities, which are amazing, but they don't come without, like, years of hard work and years of making a name for yourself. So it's a lot of uphill climb, but you can get there. You know what I mean? You just have to be willing to take that waiter job in the meantime. You have to be willing to,
compromise.
do some dirty work, Like, I waited tables for like 6, 7 years. You know what I mean? Like, it's not fun. It's not fun being in your mid-20s when all your other friends who you went to college with are doing all this stuff and you're still waiting tables. Like, it's not cute. But if your dream is big enough and you care enough and you believe in yourself, and like me, I never believed in my own ability, but what I did believe in is my ability to do the work, because that's a choice. You know what I mean? Like, it like we were talking before, like, it may take, LeBron James 10 hours to develop a skill at basketball that it takes me 2 weeks to develop, just because we're wired differently. And he's also 7 feet tall, but I digress. Point is, like, as long as you're willing to do the work, like, good stuff will come. You have to be mentally tough to handle 90%, maybe that's exaggerating, 75 to 80% disappointment, or 75 to 80% uncertainty and disappointment mixed in there, and just some things that don't make you feel good, and just wondering when this is going to happen for you. But before too long, I can promise you, what will happen is you will be living the life that you were dreaming about a few years prior. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And listen, this is not coming from a guy who's rolling in the cash, and this is not coming from a guy who is, killing it and has, a song with 2 billion plays on Spotify and all this stuff. But, like, my first goal was to just support myself as a musician and to not have to wait tables and to not have to, take gigs with clients that I don't really care about and, to not have to scrape by. And I don't have to do those things anymore. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like now, I have like one main freelance client that I love working for that is, related to music and I care about it. And everything else is me. Everything else is this little thing that I've been building. And I don't say that to boast. I say that because whoever is listening to this, like, oh, how am I going to make money? I was there very recently
Yeah.
and I was
Yep.
really scared. And oh, by the way, I've had a serious partner for the last 7 years that is like trying to plan a life with this person who doesn't know how they're going to make money. So you want to talk about, and I'm married this person, so she's obviously a pretty important part of my life. And I think like, yeah, life happens and it's scary and it's tough, but like you have to wake up every morning being like, wow, thank God I'm a creative in 2019, soon to be 2020. Thank God, because we have more tools and opportunities at the click of a button now than our parents and grandparents and ancestors had, in a 100-mile radius. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's crazy. So
Absolutely.
I don't know if that answered Sean's question.
I'm sure that helps Sean out.
I hope so.
I'm sure it'll inspire him in some way. And yeah, I think you just got to find something that you're passionate about, and it's not about. I think there's a thing that you need to get into your mind. Everybody, like I've had students who are like, they're okay, right, and what they do, and they're thinking like, how can I get paid gigs, for example, and it's like you're not even ready for a gig. Like never mind a paid gig. So it's like I think you just got to work your ass off, get really good at what you do. And eventually, like, if you play your cards right and get in the scene, and things will come to you. And again, I can't
keep
even
showing
remember what
up,
his
man.
question was. Yeah, show up, be early, and just be a nice guy. You'll be fine. But one thing that you've touched on quite a lot here, Pat, is YouTube and social media, right? And we have had at
so
least
many conversations.
probably six 2-hour long chats about social media, right? We used to talk about it all the time because it's what we were doing quite a lot of. And have you always been like into social media? Like when did you get started? Is it something you've always been drawn towards, like putting out content? Or
the reason why I started was just because I knew that it was a way to kind of cut out the middleman that existed in the traditional industry, right?
Yeah.
Like if you wanted to get to people, you needed, traditional media said like you had to pay a publicist, you had to pay for advertising, you had to do all of this, where social media is this thing that we all, maybe a little bit more in its golden days, we enjoyed being on, and we enjoyed connecting to people, and we enjoyed being on MySpace and Facebook and then Instagram, and Twitter was in there somewhere or some garbage, and YouTube was there as well, and Vine and all of these different platforms. I've always interacted there, so it always made sense to me to put stuff out there. I think what changed was, I started to see people actually doing cool things because they had a social media following. And then the overall industry kind of changed, and commerce changed. And, the way that the brands changed the way that they spend their marketing dollars. And, instead of spending it all on traditional media, they're like, well, we could work with Reese and have him be playing our guitar, or have him talking to people about these picks or these straps or these strings or whatever it is, whatever. And I was like, oh, cool. I really want those opportunities. And I think social media has like just always made sense to me to play ball there.
Yeah. Earlier you were saying how it's like it's a free place for us to advertise, and that's like one of the best reasons to use it. And
exactly,
I'd never actually thought like that, because I was drawn to it in a completely different way. Actually, I started using social media as a musician Literally just because I'd started this new venture. I'd just been studying music at college, and I just wanted to document some progress.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then it transferred into something that I could use as an asset.
Mm.
But I think what a lot of people hear are these types of chats about people talking about how much it's maybe paid off, or how they're working with this brand and getting free gear and whatever it may be. But I think a lot of people don't realize the amount of work that goes into actually getting to that.
Oh my gosh.
So, like, you're sitting in a place right now where you've got established kind of Instagram following, and YouTube seems to be working quite well for you. It's like, how much work do you think, like, as someone, I know nowadays it's just really hard to get a break, but how much work do you think goes into actually getting it done weekly?
I can give you like quantifiable numbers because I remember it like it was yesterday. So when I started really, like, when I had like my first kind of record that I wanted to start sharing with people, like, that was all happening in like 2013. And I started coming to the city and working here and playing gigs and writing and networking and doing all of that. And Olivia and I moved here shortly thereafter, right? So I remember, like, social media was the way that I was gonna, like, I was totally independent, totally, invested, my own money. Like, my parents helped me. Like, it was just like this whole thing, like, anything I could do to like get kind of in out there was whatever, in kind of like making music, right? And I knew social media was something that I could do low cost or even free, that was just like you said, like, it's free. You can put stuff out there and see if people want to share it with their friends and all of that. And there were some pretty, like, interesting things that were happening, and things were changing and evolving, and Instagram was kind of starting to be a thing. And I remember, like, 2013 was the year that I started making videos for Instagram, and they were okay. I mean, they weren't great, but they were okay.
A video's been allowed on Instagram since 2013. Is that as long as it's been?
They were 15-second videos, if you recall.
No, because I remember doing 15-second videos, but I didn't think it was that long ago. 5 years.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
So that's how long it's taken. 5 years of growth.
So I remember, let's see.
Wow.
So think about this. 2015, like fall of 2015, I celebrated 10,000 followers.
Damn. Wow.
So it took 2 years. Yeah. Oh, I did not have
No, I was the same, dude. Like 3 years.
I did not have a quick, like, I have friends that, like, we're talking like 60, 70, 80,000 in a year. Like,
yeah, it's mad.
It's crazy, and good for them. Like, it's great to see that happen. And you know what? Like, it's not a competition. Everybody deserves to win. And then I have other friends that are insane, and they've got like 2,000 followers, and I'm just like, the number of followers, just let's go on record, is no indication of how talented a person is, how worthwhile or valuable they are. If nothing else, we should all be supporting each other and following each other, because for some reason, like, and hopefully nobody hears this, brands think it's valuable and they will support you. And that's the way it should be in the music world. The corporations with the money should be supporting the artists and giving them the tools that they need to succeed in their ventures. But I digress. So from there, it was like, here's a story, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, which is, to this day, dude, one of the most impactful stories that I have from my career as a musician. So it was like April of 2018, and I had set out with a lot of goals, and it was the year that I knew that I was going to propose to my then girlfriend. And that's an expensive choice. If even if no matter what you do, like, an engagement ring is an expensive thing, no matter how you slice it, and that's all relative. And the choice that I made wasn't, it was an expensive choice for me. Anyway, so I was trying to make some strides and some leaps forward, and I was really just striking out kind of everywhere. It felt like, and I was kind of hitting a low, and you were in town visiting. And since 2015, it has been on my list to work with D'Angelico in some capacity. I knew of their guitars, I knew of their history, I knew of kind of the rebranding they were starting to do, and I knew that they were New York based and founded, and that's really important to me, as we've talked about earlier. And I had a short list of companies that I wanted to start working with, because 2018 was really the year that I started doing a lot of that stuff. I had like 3,000 followers, and at least in my head, like that was, people would at least be willing to read a message from me, right? And I was going to say, hey, here's what I can do for you. And by the way, I had the 1 or 2 videos on YouTube that had done pretty well at this point. So I was like, oh, okay, I have something to offer brands, which, by the way, if you're looking to work with brands, always come from the position of like, hey, here's how I think I can help you guys.
100%.
That is instead of saying, hey, I think you should give me free stuff. Like, people are going to be like,
not going to happen.
Get lost, dude. Like, get out of here. So anyway, I was on the way down to meet you, and I've told you this story, but I'll just say it out loud. I was like, I don't care. I'm going to swing for the fences. I'm going to email D'Angelico. I'm just going to do it. Whatever. If they don't read it, if they don't say anything, who cares? That's the kind of win I need. And I'm just going to do it. I'm going to set that intention, and I'm going to go for it and see what happens. So I'm literally on the train headed down to West 4th Street in Manhattan to meet you, because I wanted to take you to Electric Lady Studios to see where Jimi Hendrix pretty much defined, the West Village as we know it. And, we were going to Rockwood, and we went through Washington Park, and we just kind of walked from the West Village to the East Village. And I thought that would be really cool for you to do. So I'm on the train down, and I finished drafting this email, and I'm like, okay, boom, I'm going to literally send this off either later tonight or tomorrow morning. So it isn't, and this is just kind of back to the conversation about collaboration. And one of the biggest lessons in my life has been to allow God or the universe or whatever to use the people in my life to use that collaborative spirit and energy, and 2 people coming together to do something cool, as opposed to just holing up in my little 1-room studio with the door closed and doing it all myself, and just being like precious about it, and nobody can see this until it's finished. Nobody can see my imperfections. No, like, link arms with people in your life and work on stuff together, and support each other, and give support when you see a friend in need, and allow people to support you when you're feeling down and you're hurting. And it's just been like a very hard thing for me to learn and let go of in my life, this need to just like fix myself and to do it all myself, and then I'll go out in the world and be presentable, right? Like, life isn't like that. Like, let the people in your life do things with you. And I thought it was really interesting that literally I asked you what you were doing this week, and you said, the only thing I have planned is going to the D'Angelico showroom. Do you want to come with me? And I just thought it was so funny that like that intention was set for me. And this thing that I wanted so much, more than anything, they are the hands down the company that I have had the most wonderful relationship working with. They've become friends. Justin, who's the artist relations guy, he's become a friend of mine. Like, I love being a part of whatever they're doing. I help them with content. I always leap at an opportunity to make a YouTube video for them. Like, I love this company, right? And I love their guitars, and it means the world to me that I'm associated with them. But like, that relationship started because a friend said, hey, do you want to come with me and check out the showroom? Which, by the way, is private. Like, they technically do take walk-ins, but it's like, it's supposed to be by an appointment only, and it's very, exclusive. And it's like, that's one of the cool things about the brand. And I just think like that was such a major life lesson for me, like not only in setting intention, but like, yeah, like y- build relationships with people, like not for leverage, not for whatever, but like good things come when you just like you meet people and you just never know what's going to come. So I think that that's like still to this day like one of my favorite stories about how that all came together. And I don't even know where we started, like what we were talking about before this, but like
I don't know. Just keep going.
it's just like it's yeah, it's kind of brings everything full circle when you think about it. Like, you know, whether it's whatever you're trying to do, like I had such a hard time getting out and feeling competent and confident, like that I could go and meet other musicians and be worthwhile for them. You know what I mean? Like I was like, oh, like these guys are pros. They don't want to talk to me. Like whatever. It's
Hmm.
like, no, you never know. You never know.
You
I
just gotta
I
show
mean,
up.
yeah.
You gotta be there.
What we were talking about was social media, like and how much work that is. And
Yeah.
I just think like social media is a great tool for getting things like that. I mean, D'Angelico to round it out, like I think they loved the energy that you and I brought in, and we were just so stoked to be there and play their guitars and jam together and whatever. I think they were like, yeah, like we would love to work with you guys. And I just think your following was in a great place. Mine was still kind of like, well, I don't know. I think I had maybe like 24,000 followers at the time.
Yeah.
Um, And I just think, man, like, you just never know. The point is, like, you need to be not focused on the numbers because they don't, they mean something, but like at the end of the day, people want to see good content. They want to see that you have, you know, there's, like we were talking about earlier, kind of everything's been done. Yeah, you're not going to do anything on the guitar, really, with few exceptions, that hasn't been kind of done before. You're not going to do anything lyrically, vocally, whatever, that hasn't been influenced by something else. So, like, don't try to do that. Try to be yourself and try to ask yourself, what exactly is it that I'm feeling in this moment when I'm creating this piece of content or creating this song or whatever, or this guitar performance that is going to resonate with an audience, and put that out into the world.
Mhm.
Don't focus on like, well, I got to play Edge of Desire again because that gets a lot of views. Like, literally, gouge my eyes out if I ever see somebody cover John Mayer or Lenny by Stevie Ray Vaughan again. I am done. I'm done, guys. I'm fed up. I'm at this point a crotchety old man. Stop it. I'm just kidding. But if you feel inspired to do that, do your thing. But like,
Yeah.
seriously, we need less of that, and we need more people, you know, less people looking into the camera and more people looking into themselves. Mic drop.
Damn.
Thank you.
Oh man,
Thank you.
I want to end the podcast right now because that was like the best thing it could end on. But that's no, you're just you're great talking. You should make your own podcast, man.
Oh, thanks, man.
You
Thanks.
could roll with it.
I definitely talk too much, but
No,
I
you're
appreciate
great.
you.
But I just have actually just one other question, right? Because we've really covered like the stuff I was wanting to get into. But
Nice.
obviously, right now we're sitting at the end of the year, kind of reflected on the year that has happened. But what's happening for Mr. Breen in 2020? You know, what are the big things that are going to be happening? What can we expect?
Like I said, I just want to get lean and focus on what really matters and stop being so concerned with all of the things that we just talked about, numbers and analytics and this and that. I mean, I'm content with what I have, and I not content in the way of like, that's good enough. Like, I feel very fortunate and blessed to have had my hard work recognized by so many people. I'm feel good about that, and I don't need to focus on growing I need to focus on putting things out into the world that I've created that I care deeply about, that are either important or passionate or fun or entertaining, whatever, to me, and let that be the metric of success, not, hey, oh, well, I lost, 20 followers today, or, oh, I gained 100 followers with that last post, or whatever. Like, that's all nonsense. That stuff is all great to have, but not at the expense of creating
Art.
the stuff, exactly, the stuff that really matters, stuff that really impacts people's lives. And that's why we're here. That's why we signed up to be artists, because once upon a time, something that somebody did on the guitar or in a song or whatever impacted us so deeply and so profoundly that we said, wow, if I can do half for somebody else what this person just did for me, that would be significant. I have this picture behind me right here of a super old album from a band called Death Cab for Cutie. And the album is called Transatlanticism. And that was the album, really, that and Get Born by Jet, which is over here. Jet is my favorite band of all time, fun fact, which a lot of people don't know. They always assume because I play guitar that John Mayer is my favorite of all time. I do really like John Mayer, but he's got nothing on Jet. Sorry, I digress. Point is, these albums have had such a profound impact on me that, like, that's why I keep them up, because I get to look at them every day and say, oh yeah, that's why you're here. You have to give that back. Because if you just keep that for yourself, and you're capable of giving that to others, well, then you're not doing your due diligence on this planet. You know what I mean? I had a mentor who used to tell me, if you keep that all yourself, you're doing us a disservice. You're keeping that from us. And when you start to think about it that way, that'll convict you. That's really profound. So I'm just trying to move forward in a direction that says, hey, are you really so wrapped up in your self-doubt that you are going to keep this song from people? Where, hey, maybe it's not going to get the kind of numbers that you are thinking in your head that you need to have in order for it to be a success. But if you get one or two messages from people that say, wow, that was impactful. I have a song out right now that, just to be completely honest with everybody, didn't do what I wanted it to do. The video that I worked up really hard on and had a lot of people invest their time and energy and resources into didn't do what I wanted it to do. And the song didn't do what I wanted it to do. But I get messages all the time from people that are like, wow, this impacted me. This was profound. This was special for me. So why does it got to be on such a grand scale? Earn that grand scale. So if I do that 10, 20, 30 more times, whatever it takes, I'll have the scale, the numbers that I want. But I just have to be willing to do the work. And I have to be willing to get myself out of the way and say, this might matter to somebody. It might not be the best thing that the majority of people have ever heard. It might not be the best thing that I'm capable of. It probably isn't. But if it's going to impact somebody in a positive way, it's worth sharing. And I think at the end of the day, my focus is just kind of, it didn't take a diversion. I added some other stuff that either was important, it was important, but I maybe convinced myself that it was more important than it actually is. And I just, for a short time, need to focus on really doing everything that I just said, sharing music, putting that out, seeing if that's what people want from me. And listen, if I spend 6 months to a year doing that, and it's like, oh, well, you really had it with Instagram, or you really had it with YouTube, then that's cool too. And I can put music out, and I can just let that be something that, this corner of the internet enjoys, and, the the majority of what I do is a YouTube thing or an Instagram thing or whatever. But I think like if it's like we were talking about earlier, if you have that inkling in your heart, you have that notion that there's a little bit that's not being said, there's a little bit that's not being shared that I think needs to be shared, or this might be a path that I need to walk down and just see what this looks like along the way. You just got to do it. You got to do it. And every time I've done it, you know, you may veer off course a little bit, but it's never something that you have to completely turn back and go back to where you started, because everything is a learning experience, right? And everything is valuable. And one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever heard is, you know, you have to release yourself from thinking that every choice that you make has to be the thing. It has to be the thing that you're going to do forever. That is an old school way of thinking. That comes from our parents and our grandparents and our great grandparents who spent their time doing one thing until it was time to retire. And then they sailed off into the sunset, living off of their retirement or Social Security or whatever your country has, like whatever you've got set up for people in the last portion of their life. Like, I look at my stepfather, who is 75 years old, crazy enough to think, yes, my mother remarried a much older man. But he's 75 and still works, and he looks younger than a lot of my friends' dads. And he's like, he loves what he does. He found what it is that he loves to do, and he'll work until he physically can't anymore because he loves it that much. What a thing to have modeled for me. Like, find that thing that you love so much and just do it until it's time for you to go on to the next life or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, man.
It's really simple, and we make it super complicated. You know?
Sweet.
So
man.
that's that. Music.
Right.
Music is coming, and yeah, the next song is. I'm pumped for it. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it.
All right, episode 5 is finished. I hope you all enjoyed that. I certainly did. It's always good time just catching up with Patrick and, you know, talking about what he's up to over in New York City. Yeah, go grab some merch, leave a review, and I'll see you in episode 6.